Tempest in Teyvat, Rimuru's Elemental Odyssey by KabirSingh808. The Duel of Fates, Rimuru's Ascent. As the lanterns illuminated the night sky, Liu Harbor came alive with vibrant energy. Lantern Rite was in full swing, and Rimuru found himself enjoying the festivities alongside Ether and Paimon. The streets were crowded with people laughing, eating, and celebrating the festival together. It was a sight to behold, an entire city united in joy. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a warm golden glow that mingled with the soft hues of lantern light. Children ran through the streets carrying intricately designed lanterns shaped like mythical creatures, their faces beaming with happiness. Vendors called out to passers-by, advertising their wares, while the tantalizing aroma of freshly cooked street food filled the air. As Rimuru walked, he noticed the contentment radiating from Ether and Paimon. The two seemed entirely absorbed in the sights and sounds, their carefree laughter blending seamlessly with the atmosphere. However, as the harbor came into view, Rimuru turned to them and said, "Why don't you go and meet Ketching? She must be waiting for you." Ether hesitated, looking uncertain. "Aren't you coming with us?" he asked. Rimuru waved his hand dismissively, a sly grin spreading across his face. "No, no, why would I? It's your day with her." Ether's cheeks flushed, and he quickly stammered, "It's not like that. I just asked her to celebrate together, it's nothing more than that." Paimon and Rimuru exchanged knowing grins before Rimuru chuckled. Sure, whatever you say. Still, I don't think you should keep her waiting. I'll be fine on my own. Besides, I've got some tasks to take care of." Paimon, ever eager, chimed in, "Oh, you should have said that sooner." "Let's go, Ether. We can grab some snacks along the way too." Before Ether could protest further, Paimon was already leading him away. He glanced back at Rimuru, waving goodbye. "We'll meet at our usual spot after the celebration," Ether called out. Rimuru nodded, waving them off. As they disappeared into the crowd, he murmured to himself, "How nice it is to be as happy and carefree as Paimon." His eyes drifted to a couple walking beside him. The boy leaned toward the girl, whispering softly, "Even when we die, I hope our souls will remain together." The girl giggled, her hand tightening around his. "Don't worry, we will." Rimuru paused, the words striking a chord deep within him. An image flashed in his mind, Shizu, with her gentle smile and quiet presence. The memory was vivid, almost as if she were standing beside him. "Shizu," he thought, "if you were here with me now, we might also be walking side by side through this festival." He imagined her marveling at the glowing lanterns, her eyes lit up with wonder. A bittersweet smile crossed Rimuru's face. "You'd love this festival," he mused silently. "The lights, the laughter, the life." He shook his head, dispelling the lingering melancholy. The past was a part of him, but it didn't define him. For now, he would let himself enjoy the moment. Continuing his walk, Rimuru reached the harbor. The water was a mirror, reflecting the countless lanterns floating above. Families and friends released their lanterns, each carrying a wish whispered into the night. Rimuru sat on a nearby bench, watching the scene unfold. The serenity of it all brought a sense of peace to his heart. As he gazed at the drifting lanterns, Ciel's voice broke the silence in his mind. "Master, what are you thinking? Are you reminiscing about something?" Rimuru smiled faintly. "Nothing to worry about, Ciel. Just enjoying the moment." Ciel's voice softened, almost like a gentle breeze. "Understood. But if your emotions become overwhelming, you know I'm here for you." "Thanks, Ciel," Rimuru replied. "I appreciate it." The night deepened, and Rimuru allowed himself to become a part of the celebration. For now, he wasn't a ruler, a warrior, or a figure burdened with responsibility. He was just another soul enjoying the beauty of Lantern Rite, cherishing the memories it evoked and the peace it offered. Somewhere, amidst the joy and laughter, Rimuru found a quiet solace, a reminder that even in a world far from his own, moments of happiness could still be found. As Rimuru sat on the bench, the lively noises of the Lantern Rite faded into the background. The soft murmurs of the crowd and the occasional laughter of children became a distant hum. He found his thoughts wandering back to Tempest, the kingdom he had built with care and love. What would they be doing right now? He wondered. The image of his companions flashed in his mind, Shion and Shuna preparing grand feasts, Benimaru managing security, and Gobta probably slacking off somewhere before getting caught. A small chuckle escaped his lips, but then he shook his head, brushing the thoughts away. Why am I thinking about that again? This is my time to relax. The atmosphere around him shifted as the lights dimmed. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as countless lanterns began to ascend into the night sky. Their golden glow bathed Liu Harbor in a magical light, illuminating the faces of those gathered. Families huddled together, friends held hands, and strangers shared smiles, united by the beauty of the moment. Rimuru tilted his head back, his gaze following the lanterns as they floated higher, painting the sky with their soft radiance. A sense of peace settled over him, and he couldn't help but whisper internally, "Seal, are you seeing this?" Her response came, calm and steady. "Yes, master. It is quite beautiful." Rimuru smiled faintly, the corners of his lips tugging upward. "And what about those two?" he asked, his mind drifting to Ojal and Bisht, the two beings he had taken into his personal space. Ciel's tone remained soft as she replied, "They are also watching. Shall I show you?" A visual appeared in Rimuru's mind, courtesy of Ciel's connection. Ojal and Bisht sat atop the roof of the house Rimuru had built for them in his personal space. Their forms were relaxed, their usual grand and intimidating presence replaced by a gentle warmth. The two were deep in conversation, speaking softly to one another, occasionally laughing and smiling. Rimuru's heart swelled with satisfaction at the sight. Well, he thought, it looks like everyone is enjoying the festival. That's good, isn't it? Ciel responded with a subtle warmth in her voice. Yes, master. It's wonderful. As the lanterns continued to rise, Rimuru stood from his bench. He extended his hand, and a glowing lantern materialized in his grasp. It was crafted in his personal space, a token of his own design, imbued with a small fragment of his essence. Holding it gently, he stepped closer to the water's edge, where others were releasing their lanterns. He gazed at his creation for a moment, then closed his eyes. A silent wish formed in his heart, one not bound by words but by the purest of intentions. Opening his eyes, he released the lantern, watching as it joined the countless others. Its glow mingled with the rest, a small yet meaningful addition to the sea of light illuminating the night. As it floated away, Rimuru smiled softly and whispered to himself, "I hope these smiles will never fade away." He remained there for a while longer, his eyes fixed on the lantern-filled sky, finding solace in the beauty of the festival and the unity it brought. For this brief moment, everything felt perfect, and Rimuru allowed himself to simply be. After the Lantern Rite festivities, Rimuru walked through the quiet streets of Liu Harbor. The celebrations had drawn to a close, and the city that had been alive with light and laughter now rested under the soft glow of lanterns still floating in the distance. The occasional murmur of the few remaining revelers was the only sound accompanying him as he made his way to Baiju guest house. Looking up at the serene night sky, Rimuru's thoughts drifted. That girl, will she show up in my dreams again? The thought lingered as he opened the door to his room. Letting out a soft sigh, Rimuru flicked his wrist, creating a clone to handle what he couldn't while he rested. Go check on Ether, he instructed. It's late, and he hasn't come back yet. He's probably still enjoying the festival with Ketching and Paimon, but let's not take any chances. The clone nodded, vanishing into the night to carry out the task. Satisfied, Rimuru settled into bed, letting the day's events wash over him as sleep claimed him. Once again, the dreamscape unfolded around him. The same vast ocean stretched endlessly below, its surface shimmering like glass. The sky above was an infinite expanse of blue, blending seamlessly with the horizon. There was no wind, no sound, just the tranquil beauty of the endless sea and sky. Rimuru began walking forward, his steps seemingly gliding across the surface of the water. In the distance, he saw her again, the mysterious girl who had been appearing in his dreams. Her figure was as radiant as ever, her flowing hair catching the light of the ethereal world around them. She smiled warmly as he approached, but this time, Rimuru stopped a few paces away, his gaze sharp and questioning. Don't you think it's time you told me what you want? Rimuru asked, his tone calm but firm. The girl tilted her head slightly, her serene smile unfaltering. You're right. I've been waiting for someone like you, someone who might be able to help me. Rimuru crossed his arms. Help you? What do you mean? She clasped her hands together and took a step closer. Do you know about the Nation of Justice, Fontaine? Fontaine, Rimuru repeated. Isn't that where the Hydro Archon resides? The girl smiled knowingly. Yes, indeed. Rimuru's eyes narrowed as he studied her. A realization struck him, and his expression shifted from curiosity to shock. Wait a minute, you're not just anyone, are you? You're. The girl chuckled softly, giving a small, graceful bow. Quite quick to catch on, aren't you? I am Focalors, the Hydro-Archon of Fontaine. For a moment, Rimuru was stunned. You've been coming into my dreams this whole time, but why not just contact me directly? Surely, an Archon has ways to reach people. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a serious expression. I cannot. The heavenly principles are always watching. If they discover what I intend, everything will fall apart before it even begins. Rimuru's brows furrowed. What do you intend? What's so dangerous that even the heavenly principles mustn't know? Focalors hesitated, her gaze softening as she chose her words carefully. Then, she began to speak, revealing secrets that made Rimuru's eyes widen in disbelief. By the time she finished, Rimuru stared at her, his voice low and cautious. Why are you telling me this? Why me, of all people? Because I need your help, she said, her tone steady and sincere. And only you can help me. Rimuru frowned, still trying to process everything. Why me? What makes me so special? Do you remember when I called you an anomaly? Rimuru nodded slowly. You are unlike anyone else in this world, Focalors explained. You act beyond the notice of the heavenly principles. Your very existence defies the rules they have set. You move freely where others are constrained. Rimuru rubbed his temples. That's because I'm not from this world, isn't it? Yes, but it's more than that, Focalors said. Even Ether, who is also from another world, doesn't possess the same anomaly that you do. Rimuru sighed. Let me guess. You're not going to tell me what that difference is, are you? She smiled softly. That is something you must discover for yourself. Shaking his head, Rimuru muttered, of course. He then straightened, meeting her gaze. So, what exactly do you need from me? Focalors stepped closer, extending her hand toward him. Will you help me? Rimuru studied her hand for a moment before looking into her eyes. Before I answer, is this truly what you want? You know the risks, and you know what this could cost you. Her expression softened, but her resolve remained unshaken. I know. But if it means my people can live happily, I am willing to take that risk. Rimuru sighed, a small smile tugging at his lips. All right, I'll help you. So, what do you need me to do? Focalors reached into her pocket and handed him a document. This. Rimuru took the document, his eyes scanning its contents. An approval application. For personal guard duty. She nodded. Yes. To protect one person. He turned the page, reading the name written on the document. Farina. Focalors nodded again, her smile tinged with a mix of sadness and determination. She is my public persona, Focalors explained. Your task is simple. Protect her, help her maintain the facade of a god, and ensure that she never discovers the truth about you knowing that she is not a god. Rimuru stared at the paper, his gaze lingering on a photograph attached to it. The girl in the picture bore an uncanny resemblance to Focalors, albeit younger and with a more playful air about her. After a long pause, Rimuru nodded. All right, I'll do it, but I have one condition. What is it? Focalors asked. You need to be honest with me from now on. No more secrets, no more half-truths. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. Focalors smiled, her eyes gleaming with gratitude. Agreed. As the dream began to fade, Rimuru found himself staring at the endless expanse of blue sky and ocean. The last thing he saw was Focalors' serene smile before he woke up, her parting words echoing in his mind. Thank you, Rimuru. Together, we might just change the course of this world. Rimuru woke up, his eyes fluttering open to the dim light of the moon filtering through the window. He blinked a few times, adjusting to the darkness, his mind still processing the vivid dream he had shared with Focalors. The words she had spoken lingered in his thoughts, but a faint sound from beyond his room interrupted his contemplation. The soft patter of footsteps approached, and Rimuru's senses sharpened as he rose from his bed. Opening the door, he was met with the sight of Ether and Paimon returning from their evening at the Lantern Rite. Ether looked exhausted, his golden eyes drooping slightly, while Paimon snoozed in his arms, her small frame rising and falling with each soft snore. Her tiny hands clutched at the fabric of Ether's shirt, and she mumbled something unintelligible in her sleep, her face scrunching up adorably every so often. "You're quite late," Rimuru said with a playful smirk, leaning against the doorframe. "I hope you enjoyed your date with Ketching." At the word, date, Ether's cheeks flushed faintly, and he sighed heavily. "You know it's not like that." Sure, Rimuru replied with a chuckle, stepping aside to let them pass. "If you say so. Either way, you should head to your room and get some rest. We've got a long journey ahead, and we still need to figure out how to get to Inazuma." Ether nodded, visibly too tired to argue further. As he shuffled toward his room, Rimuru couldn't resist reaching out to pinch Paimon's cheek gently. Her face scrunched up even more as she muttered in her sleep, "No. Paimon's treasure." Rimuru grinned at her reaction. "She really is something else, isn't she?" "Tell me about it," Ether muttered, shifting Paimon's weight in his arms. As Ether began to walk away, Rimuru's tone grew slightly more serious. "By the way, I'll be stepping out for the night. I might not return until tomorrow afternoon." Ether stopped mid-step, his gaze snapping back to Rimuru. "At this hour? Where are you even going?" "Don't worry about it," Rimuru replied casually. "I've got something important to take care of. My clone will stay here to assist you if anything happens." Ether's brow furrowed as he glanced at Rimuru, then at the room. "Why now? Can't it wait until morning?" Rimuru shook his head. "No, this is something I need to do tonight. If anything unusual happens, report it to my clone. He'll inform me right away." Ether's concern deepened. "You're being awfully cryptic, you know. Why the sudden secrecy? At least tell me where you're going." Rimuru gave him a faint smile but didn't elaborate. Instead, he walked toward the window, the moonlight highlighting his relaxed yet determined posture. "Trust me on this one, Ether. I'll be back before you know it." Ether wanted to press further, but the look in Rimuru's eyes told him he wouldn't get more answers. Before he could respond, Rimuru extended his hand and summoned a clone. The duplicate appeared beside him, identical in every way except for the faint energy radiating from its form. The clone gave Ether a small nod of acknowledgement, silently confirming its role as a temporary guardian. Without another word, Rimuru stepped onto the windowsill, his figure framed against the starry sky. "Take care of things here, and get some rest. We've got a lot to do tomorrow." "Fine," Ether muttered, though his tone betrayed his lingering unease. "But be careful, all right." Rimuru gave a small wave, his wings unfurling in a shimmering cascade of light. With a powerful beat, he launched himself into the air, disappearing into the night. Ether watched him go, the faint trail of his flight fading into the distance. As the window closed with a soft click, Ether turned to face the clone still standing in the room. Its expression was calm and neutral, waiting patiently for any orders. "So, do you know what this is about?" Ether asked, his voice tinged with exasperation. The clone shook its head. "I do not. My purpose is to remain here and ensure your safety." Ether sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Of course he wouldn't tell you either." "Fine. Just, if anything happens, let me know immediately, all right?" The clone nodded in acknowledgement, its unwavering composure doing little to ease Ether's frustration. Resigned, Ether turned and headed toward his room, his steps heavy with fatigue. Paimon stirred slightly in his arms but didn't wake, her quiet snoring filling the silence. "Why does he always have to be so secretive?" Ether muttered under his breath as he reached his room. "He's as unpredictable as the wind." As he opened the door and laid Paimon down gently on the bed, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what Rimuru was up to. But for now, sleep was all he could focus on. Meanwhile, back in Rimuru's room, the clone remained as still as a sentinel, its eyes scanning the surroundings with quiet vigilance. Rimuru soared through the crisp night air, the cool wind rushing past him as he sped toward Fontaine. The moonlight cast a silver glow over Teyvat's diverse landscapes below, but his thoughts were elsewhere, occupied with the peculiar task ahead. Becoming Farina's personal bodyguard, Rimuru murmured, his voice tinged with both curiosity and exasperation. He recalled Focalor's words in the dream, her tone serious yet tinged with an undeniable weight. While the request itself wasn't the strangest he had received, the early hour of the test made him grumble. But she didn't mention that the selection starts at 5 in the morning. That's cutting it close, even for me. As he flew across the Sumeru Desert, the landscape shifted from lush greenery to an expanse of golden sand stretching endlessly beneath him. The stark contrast was breathtaking, but his attention was soon drawn to something unusual. A massive sandstorm swirled violently in the heart of the desert, its sheer size and intensity defying natural expectations. Rimuru slowed his flight, hovering to get a better view. So, this is the infamous sandstorm that engulfs the desert. I remember reading about it in the Mondstadt library. That's correct, Master, Seal confirmed in his mind. It is a highly anomalous phenomenon, sustained by a significant concentration of elemental energy. The storm has persisted for centuries, untouched by natural weather patterns. Rimuru's curiosity piqued, and he considered stopping to analyze it further. However, the ticking clock reminded him of his pressing schedule. Seal, note this down. I want to investigate it when we have more time. Understood. I'll record its details for later analysis, Seal responded promptly. Refocusing on his destination, Rimuru shot off into the night sky, leaving the swirling sands behind. At the horizon, Fontaine came into view, a dazzling spectacle that made even Rimuru pause midair. The nation of Hydro stood out from the rest of Teyvat, a seamless blend of technology and artistry. Skyscrapers shimmered in the moonlight, while intricate waterways carved through the city, glowing faintly with elemental energy. Bridges arched gracefully over canals, and the streets bustled with life even in the pre-dawn hours. This place is on a whole other level, Rimuru muttered, impressed. Fontaine is renowned for its innovation and advanced infrastructure, Seal added. Its technological progress is unparalleled in Teyvat. Rimuru smirked as he descended, landing lightly on a rooftop to avoid drawing attention. Folding his wings, he began walking along the quiet streets, his eyes scanning the intricate details of the city. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint sound of distant machinery and flowing water. He hadn't gone far when a sharp voice called out from behind him. Hey, you there, who are you? Rimuru froze briefly, then turned to see a man in a navy blue uniform approaching him. The man's sharp eyes scrutinized him, his hand resting on a baton at his hip. Rimuru put on his best polite smile. Oh, I'm here for the selection test to become the Archon's personal bodyguard. The man raised an eyebrow, his suspicion giving way to mild curiosity. Do you have your approval application? Rimuru reached into his storage and retrieved the document Fokalers had given him. The man scanned it quickly, his eyes widening as he noticed the Archon's personal seal. A direct signature from the Archon herself, he murmured, glancing back at Rimuru. You must be someone important. Rimuru chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. Not really. I just got lucky, I guess. The guard handed the document back, his demeanor much friendlier now. In any case, welcome. The test begins in 3 hours. I'll take you to the venue. Rimuru blinked in confusion. 3 hours? But isn't the test supposed to start at 5 a.m.? It's already past 3 a.m. The guard shrugged nonchalantly. We tell participants it starts earlier to ensure no one is late. It's a precaution to make sure everyone arrives on time. Rimuru sighed, muttering under his breath, that's just great. What am I supposed to do for 3 hours? The guard led him through the streets to a grand arena near the city's heart. The structure was a masterpiece of Fontaine's architectural style, blending modernity with classical elegance. Hydro sigils adorned the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. The arena exuded an aura of both grandeur and discipline, befitting a place where such an important test would be held. This is where the combat portion of your test will take place, the guard explained, gesturing toward the massive doors. Before that, there's a written exam to assess your knowledge and decision-making skills. Rimuru nodded, mentally preparing himself. However, something nagged at him, and he turned to the guard. Do you have any study materials? I'd like to revise a bit. The guard raised an eyebrow. You didn't bring your own. Rimuru laughed awkwardly. I didn't think I'd have time, so I didn't bother. The guard sighed, clearly unimpressed. Fine, there's a library nearby. Follow me. They soon arrived at an ornate library, its towering shelves filled with books and scrolls on every imaginable topic. The guard gestured toward the entrance. You'll find what you need in there. Just don't be late for the test. As the guard left, Rimuru stepped inside, taking in the serene atmosphere of the library. It was silent as no one is there. Rimuru made his way to an empty table and sat down. Seal, you know what to do. Of course, Master. Rimuru's eyes glowed faintly red as Seal took over. Books began floating off the shelves, opening to specific pages as Seal organized the material for maximum efficiency. Texts hovered around him, their contents projected directly into his mind as he absorbed the information at an incredible pace. This written test might actually be challenging, Rimuru mused, flipping through a particularly dense tome. But nothing we can't handle, right, Seal? Naturally, Master. You're already 25% through the required material. Rimuru grinned. Good. Let's finish this quickly. For the next couple of hours, Rimuru focused entirely on his revision, the library becoming his temporary fortress of knowledge. By the time dawn approached, he felt fully prepared, both mentally and physically, for the challenges that lay ahead. All right, he said, standing and stretching. Let's ace this thing. As Rimuru exited the library, the first rays of dawn painted the streets of Fontaine in a soft golden hue. The city was starting to awaken, and the air was filled with the faint hum of activity. Making his way to the designated meeting point, he found the same guard who had escorted him earlier. The man was leaning lazily against a lamppost, stifling a yawn. I think it's time, Rimuru said, approaching him. The guard stretched, his grogginess evident. You're right. Let's get this over with. They walked together to the test venue, a grand hall within the arena complex. As they approached, Rimuru could sense a mix of tension and excitement emanating from the room. The faint murmur of voices reached his ears before he even stepped inside. When Rimuru entered, all conversation stopped. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to him, their stares ranging from mild curiosity to outright hostility. Rimuru felt a slight pang of unease but shrugged it off, walking confidently to the bench marked with his assigned number. Internally, he asked, Seal, why are they looking at me like that? Most likely, they're looking down on you, Master. They may not believe you belong here, Seal replied in her usual calm tone. Rimuru frowned slightly. Looking down on me, huh? He thought, glancing briefly at the other candidates. They whispered among themselves, some even smirking as they pointed in his direction. A spark of defiance flickered in Rimuru's eyes. Fine, let's show them what looking down really means. Moments later, the examiner entered the room, a tall and stern man with glasses perched on his nose. He carried a stack of question papers, which he began distributing. The rules are simple, the examiner announced, his voice sharp and authoritative. You have 3 hours to complete this exam. No cheating, that's all. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the test, the room fell silent, the atmosphere heavy with concentration. Rimuru, however, wasn't fazed. As soon as the paper landed on his desk, he activated Ciel's assistance. With her calculating prowess, questions that might have seemed complex to others were effortlessly deciphered in seconds. His pen flew across the paper, filling in answers with precision and speed that bordered on the supernatural. 30 minutes later, Rimuru stood up, paper in hand, and walked to the front of the room. The examiner didn't even glance at him. If you need to use the washroom, you'll have to wait. It's still too early to leave the exam room, he said dismissively. The room erupted into laughter, the other candidates snickering at what they assumed was Rimuru's failure. I'm not here to leave, Rimuru replied, his voice calm but firm. I've finished the exam. The examiner froze, finally turning to look at Rimuru with a raised brow. What did you say? I've completed the test, Rimuru repeated, holding out his paper. The examiner frowned, clearly unimpressed. Listen here, if you don't intend to take this seriously, you shouldn't have come in the first place. A flicker of anger crossed Rimuru's face, but he kept his composure. As I said, the test is done. I didn't leave a single question unanswered. The room fell silent as the examiner, reluctantly taking the paper, flipped through the pages. His initial annoyance gave way to shock as his eyes scanned Rimuru's answers. What, but how? The examiner muttered, his tone a mix of disbelief and confusion. What? Rimuru asked, tilting his head. I told you, I finished the exam. How much did I score? The examiner looked up at him, clearly thrown off by the sheer confidence in Rimuru's tone. The results will be announced after the exam, he said, trying to regain his composure. Got it, Rimuru replied nonchalantly and left the room, ignoring the stunned silence that followed him. As soon as Rimuru was out of sight, the examiner sat down, still holding the paper. He scanned it again, line by line, and his disbelief only deepened. Not a single mistake, he murmured to himself. Perfect answers, and all in just 30 minutes. This shouldn't be possible. The murmurs in the room grew louder as the candidates exchanged glances, their earlier smugness replaced with confusion and unease. Outside the hall, Rimuru leaned against the wall, arms crossed as he looked up at the brightening sky. "Well, Seal, that was fun," he said with a smirk. "Indeed, Master. You made quite the impression," Seal replied, her tone carrying a hint of amusement. "Though I must warn you, such displays may attract unnecessary attention." "Let them stare," Rimuru said with a chuckle. "By the end of this, they'll know exactly who they're dealing with." As the minutes ticked by, candidates finished their exams and began leaving the room one by one. Each person who exited cast Rimuru a glance, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. Rimuru, unbothered, sat in a corner, humming a light tune as he waited for the results. His calm demeanor only seemed to irritate those who believed he didn't belong there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a guard exited the examination hall holding a stack of papers. The murmurs among the remaining candidates grew louder as he approached the bulletin board and pinned a few sheets on it. "Those must be the results," someone whispered. Rimuru strolled over casually, blending into the small crowd gathering around the board. As his eyes scanned the list, a small smile tugged at his lips. His name was right at the top, with a perfect score of 100%. But before he could step away, a guard approached him, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Rimuru Tempest. Stop right there." Rimuru turned, slightly confused, but met the guard's gaze with calm curiosity. "Yes. Is there a problem?" The guard nodded, his tone serious. "You'll need to come with me. Some individuals wish to speak with you." Rimuru tilted his head. Who might that be? The guard didn't elaborate, simply motioning for him to follow. Rimuru sighed internally but complied. As they walked, he heard the murmurs of the other candidates behind him, their words laced with malice. "Look at him," one scoffed. "The cheater's finally getting caught." Another laughed. "Yeah, I bet they'll throw him out. Serves him right. Maybe they'll make an example of him," a third chimed in with a mocking tone. Rimuru ignored the jeers, but his mind briefly wandered to the three examinees who had mocked him earlier in the room. The guard led Rimuru into an opulent meeting chamber. As soon as he stepped inside, he froze in surprise. Standing before him were two individuals who radiated authority and power. The first was a tall man with pale skin, purple slit eyes, and waist-length white hair with a single blue-tinged lock. His dignified presence was enhanced by the two glowing blue horn-like accessories that extended from his shoulders. The very air seemed to hum with his aura. Beside him stood a striking woman with dark blue hair, wearing a sharp outfit that featured a dark blue bicorn, a white dress shirt, and a purple ribbon adorned with gold and light blue accents. Her presence was no less intimidating, her stance exuding confidence. Before Rimuru could say anything, the man turned to face him, his movements deliberate and graceful. "Ah, my apologies for summoning you on such short notice," he said, his voice calm and resonant. Rimuru shrugged casually. "It's fine. I don't mind." The man gave a small bow. "I am Nouvelet, the Udex of Fontaine. And this is Clorinde, our champion duelist." Clorinde inclined her head slightly, her sharp gaze assessing Rimuru. Internally, Rimuru evaluated the pair. "Seal. I get the sense that Clorinde is incredibly skilled. But this Udex, he's on a whole different level. Just who is he?" Ciel's voice echoed in his mind. "That man, he is extraordinary. I'd advise caution, Master." Before Rimuru could dwell on Ciel's warning, Nouvelet spoke again. "We've received multiple complaints from other candidates," he began. "They claim you cheated to achieve your perfect score." Rimuru's thoughts immediately darted back to the mocking candidates from earlier. "Figures," he mused. Clorinde crossed her arms, her tone sharp. "Would you mind answering some questions to clarify this matter?" Rimuru nodded. "Of course." Before he could respond further, he heard Ciel's voice again. "Master, you should know that this room is equipped with a special function. Your entire conversation with Nouvelet and Clorinde is being broadcast to the candidates outside. This ensures transparency, so no one can claim bias later." Rimuru raised an eyebrow, pleasantly surprised. "Now that's interesting." Grinning, he looked back at Nouvelet. "Well then," Rimuru said confidently, "shall we begin?" Nouvelette gave a slight nod. Very well. Let us start now. Clorinde leaned against the table, her sharp eyes fixed on Rimuru, clearly ready to dissect every word he said. The atmosphere grew tense, but Rimuru remained calm, a confident smirk on his face as he prepared to face the accusations. Nouvelette began asking questions one after another, his tone calm yet probing. Rimuru answered each with unwavering confidence, his voice steady and his smile unshaken. Every answer he gave was flawless, even when Nouvelette threw in recent updates and complex questions to trip him up. The Udex's attempts to test Rimuru's knowledge bore no fruit. His responses were not only accurate but also insightful, showcasing a depth of understanding that impressed both Nouvelette and Clorinde. As the conversation unfolded, the crowd outside grew restless. The candidates gathered near the room could hear the exchange through the broadcast. Murmurs rippled through the group, reflecting a mix of astonishment and jealousy. "Did you hear that? Not a single mistake," one candidate whispered. "Yeah, but how is he so confident? He doesn't even flinch," another muttered, half in admiration and half in irritation. A few others, however, exchanged bitter glances. Among them were the trio who had mocked Rimuru earlier. "We'll see how long he lasts," one sneered. "Yeah," another chimed in. "The physical test is where we'll crush him. Let's show him his place." Inside the room, Nouvelette smiled faintly as Rimuru finished answering the final question. "Thank you for your time, Rimuru. Your responses have been enlightening. We appreciate your cooperation." Rimuru shrugged casually, his expression unbothered. "I didn't mind. Glad I could clear things up." Nouvelette's gaze remained steady, but there was a glimmer of approval in his eyes. "You may now return to the arena with the others. The physical assessment will begin shortly." Rimuru nodded and left the room, heading toward the arena. The moment he stepped out, the murmurs started again. "Look at him. He didn't even flinch," someone said, all evident in their tone. "And everything he said was right," another added. "Not even the smallest mistake." Some of the candidates began to admire Rimuru for his confidence and intellect, while others bristled with envy. The trio from before huddled together, their expressions dark. "You know what we have to do, right?" one whispered. The others nodded grimly. "Yeah, if he's so perfect in the written test, we'll make sure he doesn't survive the physical one." Back in the room, Nouvelette and Clorinde remained seated, discussing the recent exchange. Clorinde leaned against the table, her arms crossed as she spoke. "He's too good for his own good. It's going to make him a target for the other candidates." Nouvelette nodded in agreement. "Indeed. His ability to analyze situations and provide solutions is unparalleled. It's as if he sees through every layer of a problem." Clorinde smirked faintly. "A rare talent, to say the least. But it'll also make him stand out, and not necessarily in a good way." Nouvelette's gaze turned thoughtful. "Keep an eye on him during the physical assessment. Ensure he doesn't suffer any major injuries. Some of the candidates might see him as a threat." Clorinde raised an eyebrow. "You think they'd stoop that low?" Nouvelette gave a small sigh. "It wouldn't be the first time. He's already garnered both admiration and resentment. Such a combination often invites trouble." Clorinde's expression hardened. "Understood. I'll watch over him. Besides," she added with a slight smile, "I'll be participating in the assessment myself." Nouvelette's lips curved into a rare smile. "Good. Then I trust you to handle the situation. Rimuru may be capable, but even someone as sharp as him can fall victim to scheming." Clorinde nodded firmly. "Leave it to me. I'll make sure no one oversteps their bounds." As the two exchanged their final words, the scene shifted back to the arena, where Rimuru stood. Amidst a crowd of candidates, his sharp eyes scanning the area. The air was thick with tension, and he could feel the hostile glares from some of the examinees. "Ciel," Rimuru thought internally, "this might get interesting." Ciel's voice was calm yet alert. "Be cautious, master. Some of these people have ill intent." Rimuru smirked faintly. "Let them try. I'll show them what it means to truly dominate." As the candidates stood in the vast arena, whispers filled the air. The anticipation was palpable as word spread that the Hydro Archon, Farina, would personally oversee this stage of the assessment. "Miss Farina herself is coming to watch." "Is that true?" one candidate murmured, eyes wide with disbelief. Another nodded vigorously. "Yeah, I heard the same. They say she's here to find someone worthy of becoming her personal guard." The realization sent ripples of excitement and tension through the gathered participants. Rimuru, standing calmly among them, glanced around the arena. His gaze lingered on the seats reserved for the Hydro Archon, curiosity sparking in his mind. So, she's actually attending this, he mused internally. I wonder what kind of person she is. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd. The attention of the audience shifted to the grand entrance, where two heavily armored guards took their positions on either side of a lavish chair. The anticipation was almost unbearable as the sound of footsteps echoed through the arena. All eyes turned to the approaching figure. A fair-skinned woman with a graceful yet commanding presence stepped into view. Her heterochromatic eyes, one light blue with a dark blue pupil and the other a reverse of the same hues, seemed to pierce through the crowd. Her soft white hair, accented with streaks of light blue, shimmered in the sunlight. She wore an elaborate outfit that exuded regality and sophistication, with accessories that hinted at her elemental power over Hydro. Farina took her seat with effortless poise, crossing her legs as she surveyed the participants with an enigmatic expression. Though her face betrayed little emotion, Rimuru could feel her excitement. She's intrigued by this, he thought. Interesting. As the crowd buzzed with awe, the arena gates opened once more. Clorinde, the champion duelist of Fontaine, strode in with her signature confidence. She carried herself with the air of someone who had seen countless battles and emerged victorious from every one. Her voice rang out, silencing the murmurs of the participants. Candidates, listen up, she commanded. Miss Farina has graced us with her presence today. This is no ordinary trial. The one who stands victorious will not only prove their worth but may also earn the honor of becoming her personal guard. The declaration sent a ripple of determination through the crowd. Rimuru, however, remained composed, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his katana. Internally, he chuckled. Personal guard. Clorinde continued, the rules are simple. You will fight until only one remains standing. There is no killing allowed, and once you are disarmed or incapacitated, you are to leave the arena immediately. Finally, whoever emerges victorious will face me in the final test. Her sharp gaze swept across the candidates. Let's see if any of you are worthy of such an honor. She stepped aside, standing near the exit gate to oversee the proceedings. The tension in the arena reached its peak as the participants spread out, each sizing up their competition. Rimuru remained in his spot, calm and unbothered, his katana still sheathed. His demeanor didn't go unnoticed. A group of 3 candidates, the same ones who had mocked him earlier, approached him with sneers on their faces. Hey, one of them said, his voice dripping with malice. You should just back out now. You don't belong here. Another added with a wicked grin, if you don't, we'll make sure you regret it. Let's see how tough you are when your pretty face is covered in bruises. Rimuru didn't even bother to look at them, his focus elsewhere. His silence only seemed to provoke them further, but before they could say anything else, the bell rang, marking the start of the trial. As the bell rang, the arena erupted into chaos. Participants charged at one another, the clanging of weapons and grunts of effort filling the air. Amidst the flurry of action, Rimuru stood calmly at the center of it all, unbothered, his expression one of serene indifference. The group of instigators from earlier surrounded him, their weapons drawn and smirks plastered on their faces. Their leader, emboldened by the crowd, raised his voice and shouted, "Hey, everyone! Don't you think we should deal with this pretty boy first? He's the real threat to our chances." The fighting slowed, and one by one, the other participants turned their gazes toward Rimuru. The words sank in, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Murmurs of agreement rippled among the fighters. He's too strong. He'll take the top spot if we don't deal with him now. One by one, they started advancing toward Rimuru, circling him like wolves preparing to pounce on their prey. Clorinde, observing from the sidelines, narrowed her eyes, her hand twitching toward the hilt of her rapier. She wanted to intervene but hesitated. It's not against the rules, she thought, even as unease crept into her expression. Farina, seated in the audience above, leaned forward slightly, her heterochromatic eyes sparkling with excitement. Oh, this is getting interesting, she muttered to herself, resting her chin on her hand. The leader of the instigators smirked triumphantly. What now, pretty boy? Even the champion duelist wouldn't walk away unscathed from this many people attacking at once. You're done for. Rimuru let out a soft sigh and finally spoke, his voice calm yet cutting through the noise. You talk too much. The words reverberated through the arena, and a hush fell over the crowd. The taunts, the murmurs, and even the clamor of the other fights paused momentarily, all eyes now on Rimuru. In a move that surprised everyone, Rimuru removed his hand from the hilt of his katana and raised his right fist in front of his face. My right fist will be enough to crush all of you, he declared confidently, his gaze unwavering. The leader's grin twisted into a snarl. You arrogant. He lunged forward, his sword aimed directly at Rimuru's chest, the blade glinting menacingly in the sunlight. He aimed to pierce where a human heart would be, but Rimuru effortlessly sidestepped the attack with a fluid motion. Before the man could recover, Rimuru's fist shot forward like a blur, connecting with the leader's face. The sound of the impact was like a thunderclap, silencing the arena. The leader's nose broke instantly, blood spraying as his body was sent flying backward. He landed in a crumpled heap at the feet of his comrades, his sword clattering uselessly to the ground. One of them knelt to check on him, only to find him completely unconscious. The comrade looked up at Rimuru, his eyes wide with disbelief. What did you do to him? Rimuru tilted his head slightly and replied nonchalantly, nothing much. Just punched him. The words, so casual yet so devastating, sent a ripple of unease through the remaining fighters. But instead of deterring them, it seemed to ignite their desperation. One by one, they roared and charged at Rimuru, weapons raised and determination etched on their faces. Rimuru sighed again, shaking his head. They never learn, do they? As the first wave of attackers closed in, Rimuru moved. His motions were a blur, almost too fast for the eye to follow. He ducked under a spear thrust and delivered a bone-crushing uppercut that sent the wielder sprawling. Spinning on his heel, he deflected a sword strike with his forearm and retaliated with a palm strike to the chest, sending the assailant skidding across the arena floor. Another fighter tried to flank him, swinging a mace with both hands. Rimuru caught the weapon mid-swing with his bare hand, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the ground. The crowd gasped as Rimuru casually yanked the mace away and tossed it aside. The attacker hesitated for a fraction of a second, and that was all Rimuru needed. A swift roundhouse kick sent the fighter flying into a group of his comrades, knocking them over like bowling pins. Is this all you've got? Rimuru asked, his voice calm but laced with disappointment. His movements were fluid, precise, and almost artistic. Every punch, kick, and dodge was executed with a level of skill and power that left the crowd in awe. The spectators were on the edge of their seats, their reactions a mix of astonishment and disbelief. Farina's lips curled into a grin as she watched the display. This one's special, she murmured, clearly entertained. Clorinde, however, was more focused, her sharp eyes analyzing Rimuru's every move. His technique is flawless, she thought. He's not even using his weapon or any elemental powers. What is he? Back in the arena, the remaining candidates were growing desperate. A group of 5 coordinated their attack, rushing Rimuru from all sides. One swung a halberd, while another came at him with dual daggers. The others aimed for his blind spots. Rimuru remained unfazed. With a slight smirk, he muttered, "Seal, let's wrap this up." In an instant, Rimuru's movements accelerated even further. He ducked under the halberd, grabbed the wielder by the collar, and used him as a human shield to block the dagger strikes. Twisting his body, he flung the halberd wielder into the others with enough force to knock them all down like dominoes. One by one, the remaining fighters fell. Some tried to flee, realizing they were no match, but Rimuru's speed and precision ensured none escaped unscathed. Within minutes, the arena was littered with groaning, defeated candidates. As the dust settled, Rimuru stood in the center, his right fist still clenched but untouched, his expression calm. He scanned the arena, his piercing gaze daring anyone else to step forward. But there were no challengers left. Clorinde stepped forward, clapping slowly, her eyes meeting Rimuru's with a mix of respect and curiosity. "Impressive," she said. "You handled that better than expected. But don't celebrate yet, you still have one more opponent to face." Rimuru smirked, his hand drifting back to the hilt of his katana. Finally, he said, "I was starting to get bored." As the defeated participants were dragged from the arena by the guards, the atmosphere grew charged with anticipation. The crowd buzzed with excitement, their voices blending into a dull roar. Only 2 contenders remained standing in the arena, Rimuru, the enigmatic and unshaken warrior, and Clorinde, the champion duelist of Fontaine, renowned for her speed and precision. From her elevated throne, Farina stood up, her eyes glittering with excitement and curiosity. Her lips curled into a wide grin as she leaned on the railing, addressing the two fighters. Now, this is the battle we've all been waiting for. Clorinde, our champion, against this mysterious newcomer. Show me the brilliance of a duel worthy of Fontaine. The arena fell silent. The tension was palpable. Clorinde exhaled slowly, her rapier gleaming under the sunlight as she adjusted her stance. Her pistol rested in its holster, but her hand hovered near it, ready to draw in an instant. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, assessed Rimuru carefully. Rimuru, on the other hand, stood relaxed. He drew his katana, the polished blade catching the light as he held it with an almost casual grip. His eyes darted to Clorinde's firearm, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. Guns, huh? He mused, the thought sparking curiosity. This world never ceases to surprise me. Ciel's voice echoed in his mind. Mater, Clorinde is not like the others you faced earlier. Her skill is leagues above theirs. Do not let your guard down. I know, Rimuru replied internally, his tone calm yet focused. But I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since I've faced someone of this caliber. The arena held its collective breath. Then, the bell rang. Clorinde moved first, her figure blurred, disappearing from her starting position in an instant. Her incredible speed left a crackling sound in its wake as she closed the gap between them with lightning-fast precision. Her rapier arced toward Rimuru's face, the tip gleaming menacingly. Rimuru barely managed to sidestep, the blade slicing through the space where his head had been. His eyes widened briefly, impressed by her speed. As he leapt backward to create distance, Clorinde stayed hot on his heels, her relentless strikes forcing him to remain on the defensive. Well, this is unexpected, Rimuru muttered, his grin widening. It's been a long time since someone pushed me this much. Clorinde's brows furrowed slightly at his comment, but she didn't waver. Each strike of her rapier was a blur, aimed with precision and intent. She pressed her attack, forcing Rimuru to continuously parry and evade. The clash of steel against steel rang out across the arena, echoing like a symphony of war. Suddenly, Rimuru shifted his stance. With a burst of speed, he counterattacked. His katana flashed in an upward arc, aiming for her midsection. Clorinde reacted instantly, raising her rapier to block. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the arena, cracking the ground beneath her feet. The crowd gasped in awe as Clorinde slid backward, her boots digging into the stone to steady herself. She leapt back to create distance, raising her pistol mid-motion. Without hesitation, she fired a rapid volley of bullets toward Rimuru. Rimuru smirked. He twisted his body, evading the bullets with fluid movements. As the last shot neared, he raised his hand, summoning a shimmering geo shield. The bullet struck the shield, shattering on impact. That's some impressive aim, Rimuru remarked casually. But you'll need more than that to hit me. Clorinde's eyes narrowed. She hadn't expected him to manipulate elements without a vision. Her mind raced as she pieced the puzzle together. So it's true, she said, lowering her rapier slightly. You're the one who's been traveling with that blonde traveler, aren't you? Rimuru tilted his head, his smile never wavering. You catch on quick. The arena erupted into whispers. That's the traveler's companion. Didn't he help defeat Ojal? A god. I heard they've been to only 2 nations and already defeated an ancient god. Unbothered by the murmurs, Clorinde fired again. Rimuru responded by sending a blast of wind toward her, deflecting the bullets mid-air. He then dashed forward, his katana poised for a decisive strike. Clorinde's instincts kicked in. At the last second, she sidestepped and countered with a lightning-fast slash aimed at his torso. Rimuru parried with his katana, the impact sparking a burst of energy between their blades. Why aren't you using your vision's full power? Rimuru asked, his tone almost teasing. Afraid you'll still lose. Clorinde's lips curled into a smirk. You're right. I should have used it from the start. Her vision began to glow, radiating brilliant purple light. Electricity crackled around her as she unleashed her power. Her movements became even faster, almost impossible to track with the naked eye. She launched herself forward, her rapier aimed directly at Rimuru's chest. Rimuru's eyes widened as he barely dodged. The tip of her blade grazed his hair, slicing off a few strands. She followed up with a barrage of electrified slashes, each strike faster and more precise than the last. Rimuru evaded them all, but just barely. Then, out of nowhere, Chlorine delivered a powerful kick to his chest. The impact sent Rimuru flying across the arena, skidding along the ground. Dust billowed into the air as he came to a stop, crouching to regain his balance. The crowd erupted into cheers at Chlorine's display of power. But Rimuru stood, brushing off his clothes with a calm expression. His eyes narrowed, and he raised a hand. A flash of light appeared beside him, materializing into a perfect clone. The clone sat in a meditative pose behind Rimuru, channeling power into him. The crowd gasped audibly. Cloning. Is that even possible? What kind of magic is this? Even Chlorinde and Farina were visibly surprised. Rimuru smirked, preparing his sword. All right, let's take this up a notch. The two launched themselves at each other once more. Their movements were blindingly fast, creating shockwaves with every clash. Each strike of their blades sent sparks flying, the sound echoing like thunder. The sheer intensity of their duel left the crowd in awe. Chlorine's rapier glowed with electrical energy, each slash accompanied by a crackling burst of lightning. Rimuru countered with a combination of wind and geo attacks, using the terrain to his advantage. They traded punches, kicks, and slashes, neither gaining the upper hand. The ground beneath them cracked and shattered under the force of their blows. The arena trembled with each exchange, the shockwaves sending gusts of wind through the stands. For the first time in years, Chlorine felt exhilaration. A genuine smile crossed her lips as she parried another strike. You're better than I expected, she admitted. But this isn't over yet. Rimuru grinned. Likewise. Let's see how far you can push me. Their duel raged on, the arena alive with the sound of their battle. The crowd watched in stunned silence, witnessing a clash of titans unlike anything they'd ever seen. Farina, standing at the edge of her throne, clapped her hands together in delight. Magnificent. Simply magnificent, she declared, her voice brimming with excitement. The battle was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. As Chlorine launched herself toward Rimuru with a flurry of attacks, her strikes crackled with raw elemental energy. Despite her increased ferocity, Rimuru stood his ground, dodging and parrying with impressive precision. His katana shimmered with a faint glow, reflecting the swirling dust and tension of the battlefield. In the midst of their clash, Rimuru's voice echoed in his mind. Seal, analyze her fighting patterns. I need to end this soon. Understood, Master, Seal replied calmly. Analyzing her movements now. Based on her current patterns, her attacks follow a predictable rhythm with slight deviations to maintain unpredictability. Countermeasures are ready. You can exploit the openings on her right flank. Rimuru smirked. Got it. The next time Chlorine's rapier came slashing toward him, Rimuru moved with a new ferocity. His counterattacks were sharp and deliberate, targeting every gap and weakness in her form. For the first time, Chlorine found herself on the defensive, her movements becoming less fluid as she was forced to backpedal under Rimuru's relentless strikes. Chlorine's eyes widened slightly, realization dawning on her. He's figured me out, hasn't he? She thought. She gritted her teeth, her frustration mounting. Never before had she faced someone who could analyze and adapt to her combat style so quickly. If she didn't change tactics now, defeat was certain. With a flick of her wrist, Chlorine drew her pistol, seamlessly combining ranged attacks with her rapier. Her bullets flew toward Rimuru in rapid succession, each one charged with electro energy. Rimuru weaved through the attacks with calculated ease, his movements becoming sharper and more fluid with each passing moment. It wasn't long before even this strategy began to falter. Chlorine's attacks, no matter how varied, were being read and countered with terrifying efficiency. The crowd watched in awe as Chlorine, Fontaine's undefeated champion duelist, struggled against this blonde traveler companion. Gasps and whispers filled the air, the spectators barely able to believe what they were witnessing. She's being pushed back. I never knew he is this strong. Could he be stronger than Chlorine? For the first time in her career, Chlorine felt the crushing weight of inevitability. She was losing. Her breathing grew heavier, sweat dripping from her brow as she realized her usual techniques would no longer work. I won't let it end like this, she muttered under her breath. She gripped her rapier tightly, her vision flaring brighter as she pushed her body to its limits. Using every ounce of power she could muster, she increased the speed and strength of her attacks, even if it meant burning through her remaining energy reserves. Her strikes became fiercer, and Rimuru, momentarily caught off guard, was forced to retreat slightly. The crowd erupted into cheers, mistaking her burst of energy for a comeback. Rimuru's eyes narrowed, watching her closely. "She's strong," he murmured, "but this pace isn't sustainable." Ciel's voice chimed in his mind. "Master, her stamina is depleting rapidly. She's burning through her elemental reserves to compensate for her fatigue. She cannot maintain this for long." Rimuru smirked, his confidence unshaken. "Then it's time to finish this." The two fighters squared off for what would be their final exchange. The air between them crackled with tension, and even the crowd fell silent, sensing the decisive moment was near. Clorinde launched herself forward with a burst of speed, her rapier glowing with raw electricity. Her movements were a blur, each strike aimed to overwhelm Rimuru. Rimuru, however, had already prepared for this. In a single swift motion, he summoned a clone beside him. The clone raised its katana to intercept Clorinde's attack, while the real Rimuru sidestepped, preparing his counterstrike. As Clorinde's rapier clashed with the clone's blade, Rimuru darted behind her with near impossible speed. His katana gleamed as it came to a halt just inches from her neck. Time seemed to freeze. Clorinde's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. Her rapier, which had been aimed at Rimuru, found only air. She turned her gaze to his blade, now poised at her throat. The intense battle had stirred up a cloud of dust that obscured the arena. As the dust settled, the crowd saw a surprising sight. Clorinde's rapier was pointed at Rimuru's chest, while Rimuru's katana rested at her neck. To the untrained eye, it looked like a draw. Rimuru smiled softly, stepping back as he lowered his katana. "Looks like we're evenly matched," he said, his tone light and playful. Clorinde blinked, realizing what he had done. He had intentionally positioned himself at the tip of her rapier to preserve her reputation. A mix of gratitude and frustration crossed her face, but she said nothing, merely nodding. As they sheathed their weapons and walked toward the exit, the crowd roared with applause. Nouvelette approached them, his usual composed expression tinged with faint concern. "Are both of you all right?" he asked, his gaze flicking between them. Clorinde looked down, her voice quiet. "I lost," she admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. Nouvelette gave her a knowing look. "I expected as much. But you gave it your all, even going beyond what was necessary for an assessment test." He turned to Rimuru. "And you are full of surprises. Clorinde's power is no trivial matter." Rimuru shrugged, smiling. "Don't worry. I'm fine." Nouvelette nodded and gestured toward the waiting room. "The results will be announced in 30 minutes. Please wait there in the meantime." When the time came, Rimuru returned to the arena, the cheers of the crowd echoing in his ears. Furina's radiant figure stood at the top of the dais, her smile brimming with excitement. Nouvelette's voice rang out, calm yet commanding. "By the authority of Fontaine, we declare Rimuru Tempest the victor of today's duel and the chosen personal guard of Lady Furina." The arena erupted in cheers, the crowd chanting Rimuru's name. A door opened at the side of the arena, and Rimuru ascended the steps to the dais. At the top, he saw Nouvelette, Clorinde, and, seated behind them, Furina. She clapped her hands together, her expression a mix of excitement and satisfaction. "Well done, Rimuru Tempest," Furina said, her voice playful yet regal. "I hope you're ready for the responsibilities that come with this title." Rimuru bowed slightly, his usual grin playing on his lips. "I'll do my best."